Let's name the best UFC fighter at every height. This is strictly UFC. We can do other MMA organizations in the future. Without further ado, let's begin. Standing at 3 foot 1 inch, we have Hasbulla Magomedov. With over 2.1 million Instagram followers, Hasbulla is regarded as one of the greatest up-and-coming UFC fighters of all time. It's only rumors that he'll have a fight in the UFC. There is a possibility he could take his talents to a different MMA company, but he's way too good not to be included onto this list. Hasbulla was born in 2003 and plans to face his rival, Abdu Rozik. Speaking of which, at 3 foot 3 inches, we have Abdu Rozik. Abdu has many different talents. Of course, we all know he can fight, but did you know he can also sing? Holding the record for being the shortest professional singer in history. And he was also born in 2003. He is planning to take on Hasbulla himself, which will ultimately prove who is the better fighter. Rumors are speculating that this fight will take place in the near future on an official UFC card, but only time will tell. Standing at 5 foot 2, we have Hector Sandoval. Hector made his UFC debut as a short notice replacement fighter on July 30th, 2016. He lost that fight via submission in the first round. However, prior to his UFC debut, he had a professional record of 12-2, competing at the Palace Fighting Championship. Standing at 5'3", we have Demetrious Johnson. He is the inaugural and former UFC flyweight champion, competing in the UFC from 2011 to 2018. Johnson faced Joseph Benavidez in the finals of the UFC flyweight tournament on September 22nd, 2012. He defeated him in a split decision to become the inaugural UFC flyweight champ. At 5'4", we have Henry Cejudo. He's a former UFC flyweight champion and bantamweight champion. He's the 4th UFC fighter to hold titles in 2 different weight classes simultaneously and the 2nd to defend titles in 2 different weight divisions. He's the only person to win an Olympic gold medal and a UFC title. At 5'5", we have Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson currently competes in the flyweight division of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He is the 2-time and current UFC flyweight champion and considered to be the top 10 pound-for-pound active fighters as we speak. At 5'6", we have Frankie Edgar. He currently competes in the bantamweight division of UFC. He's a former UFC lightweight champion. He was able to earn and defend his lightweight title multiple times. He's also competed at the featherweight division and competed for the UFC featherweight championship on 3 different occasions. At 5'7", we have Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo competes in the UFC at the bantamweight division. He also competed at the featherweight division. He became the first UFC featherweight champion following the UFC and WEC merger. He is considered to be one of the best UFC fighters of all time and is ranked number 3 in the UFC bantamweight rankings. Standing at 5'8", we have Marlon Vera. Vera currently competes in the bantamweight division for the UFC and is currently in the top 10 rankings in the bantamweight division. As of this upload, he is the only fighter to ever defeat Sugar Sean O'Malley. At 5'9", we have Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is the first UFC fighter to hold UFC championships in 2 weight classes simultaneously. He is the former UFC featherweight and lightweight double champion. He has the most pay-per-view sales in MMA history, headlining in 5 out of the 6 highest-selling UFC pay-per-view events of all time. At 5'10", we have Khabib Nurmagomedov. Some good runners-up for this option include George St. Pierre and Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. Khabib retired with an undefeated record of 29-0 and is considered one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time regardless of height. Khabib has notable wins over Conor McGregor. He competed in the lightweight division of the UFC and had the longest reign as the UFC lightweight champion from April 2018 to March 2021. At 5'11", this is a tough call, but I'm going with Max Holloway. Some honorable mentions include Jorge Masvidal with the quickest knockout time against Ben Askren, Daniel Cormier, and Sean O'Malley. Max Holloway, however, became the UFC featherweight champion when he defeated Jose Aldo on June 3rd, 2017, and is currently considered one of the best UFC featherweight fighters and one of the best overall pound-for-pound active fighters in the UFC. Standing at 6 feet tall, we got Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman currently competes in the welterweight division of the UFC and is the current UFC welterweight champion. He's also currently considered to be one of the best pound-for-pound active fighters as of this upload. At 6'2", we have Anderson Silva. An honorable mention could be Kimbo Slice. Anderson Silva, however, is a former UFC middleweight champion and holds the record for the longest title reign in UFC history, holding the title for 2,457 days, which lasted from 2006 and ended in 2013, with 16 consecutive UFC victories during that time. Standing at 6'4", we got Jon Jones. However, some great runners-up include Adesanya and Francis Ngannou. Jon Bones Jones is a former two-time UFC light heavyweight champion, holding the title from March 2011 to April 2015 and from December 2018 to August 2020. Jon Jones also held the interim UFC light heavyweight championship in 2016. Jones became the youngest champion in UFC history with his title victory at the age of 23. At 6'5", we have Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander the Muller Gustafsson primarily fought in the light heavyweight division of the UFC, becoming the top contender and fought for 3 titles. Keyword being fought for them. Unfortunately, he did not win any. He is regarded as one of the best UFC fighters to never win a UFC championship. At 6'7", we have Alexander Volkov. Alexander is a current UFC heavyweight. He's been an MMA competitor since 2009 and formerly held the heavyweight UFC championship. At 6'8", we have Tim Sylvia. Tim Sylvia is a retired MMA fighter, professional wrestler, and a former 2-time UFC heavyweight champion. He has competed as a super heavyweight and heavyweight during his time in the UFC. At 6'10", we have Gan McGee. An honorable mention at this height would be Wes Sims. On September 26, 2003, McGee earned a shot at the UFC Heavyweight Championship, undisputed against Tim Sylvia, which stood 6'8", in a match that was considered to be the Battle of the Giants. McGee lost his fight by TKO in the first round. After the fight, however, Tim Sylvia tested positive for steroids and was stripped of his title. At 6'11", we have Semi Schilt. Semi Schilt made his debut with the UFC on May 4th, 2001, facing Pete Williams in the UFC 31 event. Semi Schilt uses height advantage to prevent Williams from applying a ground attack and was knocked out with body kicks and punches. However, in his last fight with the UFC, Semi was taken down and he was tapped out. At 7 feet tall, we have Stefan Struve. Stefan Struve competed as a heavyweight in the UFC and is the tallest fighter in history of the UFC. However, Struve lost his UFC debut at UFC 95 in the first round. So here is the best UFC fighter at every height from shortest to tallest. Let me know what you thought of this list and what you want to see next. Don't forget to knock out that like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. This has been Ringside Rewind, and we'll fast forward to you later.